As you all know, some sermons are carefully constructed with quotes from this theologian and that inserted in, and other sermons are a story I tell you because the text comes to life during the week. Well, with this incredibly difficult gospel passage that Tom read for us, that's what happened this week. So as we prepare for the word preached, would you join with me, your hearts and minds in prayer? Oh God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of each of our hearts be found acceptable in your sight. For you are our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. My Mondays are carefully timed and scheduled. I build a wall around myself on Mondays because if I don't get certain things done on Monday, then the whole rest of the week falls down like dominoes. It's just a cause and effect kind of thing. So when I left lectionary Bible study on Monday morning, with nothing more than the moans and groans of my colleagues in my ears, I was a little distraught. We didn't know what to do with this gospel passage. What do you do with a story where Jesus talks about an absentee landowner and a wall with a watchtower and a wine press and trusted servants who end up offing everybody who comes to see them? What kind of good news is that? So I came back to the office and I sat down at my desk and I read and read and read and I worked and worked and worked. It's like I was there in that vineyard pressing those grapes and pressing those grapes and pressing those grapes, and nothing was coming out. So when Mallory Casperson showed up for our regular Monday appointment, I said, look, we've got to read this Bible passage again. Mallory comes every Monday afternoon to help me get Community Underground worship in order for Tuesday night. And usually I have everything done for this worship service before she gets there, but that was not the case. So I said, look, we've got to read this passage. I don't even know where to start. I mean, what do you do with a gospel passage that wasn't written for us and is harder to translate into our time and place? The Matthew community, they were writing for people who were at odds with the religious leaders of the day. Religious leaders who were taking the law, which is supposed to be about mishpat and tzedakah, about justice and righteousness. And instead, they were twisting it to be self-serving. That's who this passage is written to. It's written to those religious leaders. What do we do with that kind of passage? Well, Mallory and I started to reread the passage, and then I heard somebody at the door. Hello? Is anybody here? And I felt my walls shoot up even more. I don't have time today to deal with somebody who's got a problem. I just don't. I've got to get this done. The whole rest of my week is going to be ruined. What am I going to do? So I walk out into the office and I see somebody who's come by before in the past for help. And he begins to talk with me. And immediately, my walls go up. Look, somebody's in my office. I'm sorry, I just don't have time today. But he says, no, my walls are even firmer. No, I got to get this done. I am panicking inside, and I just want him to leave. And he says, it's an emergency. Well, honestly, I've heard that it's an emergency before, but I'll listen again. Tell me, what's your emergency? And he explains that he has a friend, another friend that I know, who's fallen down drunk and ripped his pants to shreds. Do I have any pants? Now, I have to tell you that if this guy had stopped by and asked for an emergency pair of pants just a few days before, I would have sent him away empty-handed. But less than 36 hours before this conversation, I stood in the basement of McKinley Church at Laura and Janelle's reception and stood there talking with Pastor Heidi about Canteen Run, going to be in our parking lot several nights a week during the winter. And Heidi was telling me about different things that McKinley says, and Heidi says to me, you know, we have a clothing closet. It's open Tuesday evenings and Thursday evenings, and if there's an emergency, Heidi says, we can even open our clothing closet in an emergency. We may not have what somebody needs, but we'll do it. Like I said, if this guy had come by just a few days before, I would have sent him away empty-handed. But suddenly, I knew about the clothing closet. So I said to him, look, go right around the corner, go to McKinley Church. And he interrupts me and says, it's not a Tuesday or a Thursday. No, I said. It's an emergency. They'll open the closet for you. I promise. Go. But I could tell that my words didn't mean a lot. For a guy who has a friend who's passed out drunk someplace in ripped pants, he's just trying to get help as quickly as he can, and here's another person who's just passed him off. It's how he felt. His shoulders slunk over, and he began to walk out of the office. And that's when the last brick in the wall that I had constructed around myself crumbled that day. And I called after him and said, look, I'll call ahead. They'll know that you're coming. I promise. I promise. They'll help you find some pants for your friend. So I went in my office and called, and the person who answered at McKinley was cheerful and bright and happy and said, oh yes, of course, I'll go and have it ready for him. I hung up the phone, and Mallory looked at me with this sense of wonder. She said, how did he know to come here? I mean, you can't spit in this neighborhood without hitting a church. How did he know to come here? I said, well, we try to help people here when we can, and I can't always, but we try. And if I can't help somebody, then I try to refer them to somebody who can, or to send them to somebody who can. And that's when Mallory's eyes got wide, and she said, oh, it's like the gospel passage that I just read. It is? I said. Yeah, it is. Those servants, those trusted servants, they live inside of this wall, like we have these walls that surround our church. We're not supposed to keep all the good stuff inside. She said we're supposed to give them away. Our time and our stuff and our money, we're supposed to give it away. And then her eyes perked up again, and she said, this is a stewardship passage. It is? I said. Yes, Mallory said. This is a stewardship passage. Look. Why do you think they have that wine press? They're supposed to gather the harvest and press the wine and share it with the whole world. She said, this is a passage about communion. It is, I said. Yes, it is. Why do you think the wine press is in there? Isn't there something about the new covenant being poured out? That's what this is all about. Yes, it is. Because we may not be the religious leaders of Matthew's day, but we are religious leaders nonetheless. Because here, in our bulletin, every Sunday, you are listed as such. We believe in the communion of all saints and the priesthood of all believers. And so here, it says, ministers, the community of Community United Church of Christ. And we are called as the priesthood of all believers, not to collect the goods and keep them for ourselves, but to press those grapes into wine that is poured out for the whole world. The new covenant embodied in love, made of God's justice and righteousness. Not just for us, inside of these walls, but poured out for the whole world. Amen.